These days, it feels like it's kind of hard to find people on the left who proudly and loudly express support for Ukraine. Don't get me wrong, a few years ago, when the invasion first started, a lot of the most prominent left wing figures were out there championing Ukraine. Some others, even quite large ones, were doing the opposite, but for the most part, it seemed like the left was certainly leaning on the pro-Ukraine side of the issue, which I'm a big fan of. As someone who followed the entire invasion from the start all the way to this point, watching footage, reading the news, keeping up with what Zelensky, what soldiers, what civilians in Ukraine have been saying, hell, even going off of testimony from Russian soldiers. All of this shows a consensus of evidence that the Russians are engaging in war crimes and an unjust invasion based on a nationalistic fervor to rebuild the glory of the Soviet Union that Russia yearns for. It's their, like, 1950s white picket fence America. For them, it's the Soviet Union and the power it represented, how much land they held, how many satellite states they had due to their conquest, how many different ethnic groups and different outside groups that were now in their borders they could subjugate to whatever they pleased, such as the Ukrainians. Right now, the idea that our president, the president of the country that is essentially the leverage holder in any global conflict, especially one like this where Russia and America aren't exactly best pals, but historically, in recent decades, we have been friendly. America and Russia have until, well, even now, I guess, but until relatively recently, been on a fast track to getting less hostile to each other. Putin himself has gotten in the way of it a fair amount, but, you know, it's not the same as it was during the Cold War era, which was only a few decades ago. You know, if you're watching this and you're in your 20s, your parents definitely remember the Cold War era. So, with that in mind, I think it's worth pointing out that, like, yes, we do need to avoid escalating conflict with a country like Russia, sure, but that does not mean that we should kowtow to the desires of a war criminal tyrant, that is Vladimir Putin. Unfortunately, we all know, due to many, many undeniable pieces of evidence, from the Mueller report to the that DOJ report that came out that showed that Russia's government had spent, like, I forget what it was like $100 million or something like that they had spent to pay online content creators to promote Donald Trump over the course of, that was just a years-long contract that had leaked. Like, that's all we ended up finding out about from the DOJ investigation. For all we know, going back 10 years, they could have been spending hundreds of millions of dollars a year in order to fund pro-Trump content. But we know that was happening. We know that they were paying for pro-Trump ads as well, the Russian government. And we know that they hacked the DNC to try to get dirt on Hillary Clinton and the Democratic Party. Russia is decidedly pro-Trump. They, for one reason or another, whether you think it's that Trump is completely bought out and in Putin's pocket, or what I think is actually the more likely scenario, Putin, as a conqueror in his mind, sees Trump as the weaker, less competent leader that he is. He recognizes that. And he's like, this guy buys his own bullshit to a degree that not even Putin does. And Putin sees him as a useful idiot that will weaken America with his incompetence, obviously helping to make Russia an even stronger force on the world stage, because it won't take long. If you're crippling America with retard leadership, for lack of a better way to describe it, like we're under right now, then it's not going to be as hard to compete against us in every field imaginable in the future. So, it's quite upsetting to know that Trump went to Alaska and had a meeting and press conference with Vladimir Putin, keyword, without Zelensky. Zelensky was not invited, so that's cool. That's just great, right? Most people are calling this what it is, which is a strategy meeting, not a peace talk, because the person who is being, the party, I should say, it's being victimized, the person who represents the party being victimized in this situation is not invited. But it's not even just that. Apparently Trump left several classified documents out in public and forgot them in the open while he was in Alaska. I'm not joking. Trump apparently, like leaving your homework on your desk at school, like straight up, left classified documents on like a counter at a bar or something. I don't even remember. It was like a restaurant. And then proceeded to leave. And then someone involved in government or somebody figured out what it was and got it back in the hands of the president. But he literally dumbfucked his way into potentially leaking extremely classified documents because he's just a forgetful dumbfuck. I don't know how else to say it. That's just what he is. And so let's watch this absolute baboon go on stage with a war criminal tyrant to give a press conference. Let's see. Are we getting any peace in Ukraine anytime soon that isn't in exchange for, like, every bit of land that Russia has already taken from Ukraine? Or something like that? Let's find out.
Gentlemen, the President of the United States of America and the President of the Russian Federation.
Dude, what if secretly they're in Alaska planning how best to do a joint invasion of Canada? And then like half of Canada goes to Russia and the other half goes to America. What if that's their plan? Because like if Trump is serious about making Canada the 51st state, that would be the way to do it, right? Get Russia on board and have Russia invade like through like Alaska and backed up by American Alaskan troops, and then have like the southern border of Canada get ground invaded by like mainland America. I feel like if Trump wasn't just bullshitting about Canada the 51st state thing, I feel like he'd want to get Russia on board just so he wouldn't have to declare a draft to try and pull it off. Don being Don, what a silly goose. Yeah, he was not being a silly little guy. I think he was being serious.
Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, our negotiations have been held in a constructive atmosphere of mutual respect. We have very thorough...
Yeah, but where's Zelensky, Mr. Putin? Where is the president of the country that you are trying to invade and own because you think it belongs to you?
Negotiations that were quite useful. I would like to thank once again my American counterpart for the proposal to travel out here to Alaska. It only makes sense that we've met here because our countries, though separated by the oceans, are close neighbors. So when we've met, when I came out of the plane and I've said, "Good afternoon, dear neighbor. Very good to see you. In good health and to see you alive." I think that is very neighborly. And I think that's some...
Putin's voice is very feminine. I agree, Mike VG. Do you guys think he might be trans?
Kind words that we can say to each other. We're separated by the Strait of Bering, though there are 2 islands only between the Russian island and the U.S. island. They're only 4 kilometers apart. We're close neighbors, and it's a fact. It's also important that Alaska has to do with our common heritage, common history between Russia and the U.S., and many positive events have to do with that territory. Still, there is tremendous cultural heritage back from the Russian America. For example, Orthodox churches and a lot of, more than 700 geographical names of Russian origin. During the Second World...
Okay, this is something Putin does that's, like, really interesting. I haven't watched a lot of Putin's speaking engagements, because he's not the president of my country, but I really should, because I'm already starting to notice patterns in his, like, nonsense doublespeak. Or not his doublespeak. He's the opposite of Trump in a lot of ways. Putin is actually really smart. Like, he is a really intelligent man from what I can tell. Obviously, like, you kind of have to be a certain level of smart to have the special forces background he has. Like, there's a certain intelligence required to know how to kill a man in the many, many ways he knows how to kill a man. So he's kind of got that evil genius kind of thing going on for sure. But what I think is really important to keep in mind is Putin knows his country's history like he's the official wiki page for Russia. Have you guys ever noticed that? Like, if you want, like, if he needs to be tested, he's like ready for gotchas, you know? So many American politicians can be so easily gotten by a simple gotcha question, right? It may seem like a question that matters, that every single politician in our government should be able to answer, but it really isn't. But it looks really bad regardless, for no real good reason, if you can't answer that question. A really good example is like, America will be about to invade a country or go to war with a country, and reporters will ask like a senator or a congressman who supported going to war, what is the population of the country we're about to go to war with? And if they can't answer, it's meant to be like a big, ooh, like, ooh, how do you not know that? Or more often, it'll be a question, like a simple stats-based question about our, like, domestic policy or something. And it's an easy gotcha to, like, ask, do you know so-and-so? And if you don't, it kind of looks bad, right? Putin could never get caught in one of those gotchas. Never in a million years. I don't know if that gotcha method is really common in the Russian media, so he's trained himself for it, or if he's just that passionate. But he knows, it seems like he knows everything about Russian history, geography, languages, like all that shit. And so when he wants to make a point, he doesn't just make it a boisterous, flowery, nonsense, hollow statement like Trump is so good at. He instead over-intellectualizes it, more akin to a figure like Ben Shapiro. He's like really different from Trump. They're opposite sides of the same coin in a way. Like, Putin is a smart, arguably genius, paranoid man who at the very least knows how to prepare immensely to explain and know on the fly immense amounts of Russian history and statistics and anything that could be possibly useful to know, and he will flaunt that knowledge, and it makes him sound hyper prepared for any conversation, knowledgeable, and like, you know, this guy Putin, he's got an answer for everything. Maybe he does have a reason to do what he's doing if he's just so snappy and so quick to answer every question thrown his way. It is a surprisingly effective method, I think. It makes sense why so many Russians love this guy and have the Z's painted on their doors and shit. Because this guy is really good at coming off as really smart to dumb people. And I don't think Russia is that different from America. I think the majority of Russians are probably pretty dumb.
Cold War. It was here in Alaska that was the origin of the legendary air bridge for the supply of military aircraft and other equipment under the Lend-Lease program. It was a dangerous and treacherous route over the vast emptiness of ice. However, the pilots of both countries did everything to bring closer the victory. They risked their lives and they gave it all for the common victory. I was just in the city of Magadan in Russia. And
I should clarify, I don't know Russian history very well, so I'm sure a lot of the Russian history that Putin references is his version. But when I say, like, more often than not, Putin doesn't reference Russian history that even happened in his lifetime. He references shit from hundreds, if not like 1,000+ years ago. Like, he goes back to like ancient Russian history to pull anecdotes from, and he'll compare situations that are happening now to situations back then and use it to evoke a feeling of familiarity with the decisions and actions as a leader that he makes. So yeah, I'm not talking like his made up like propaganda history. I'm talking like he knows like the ancient shit in Russia. He's got a good education when it comes to like all that stuff, and so he seems like he understands the country, at least to the people he does, and they don't look past that to realize that he's a tyrant. Many of them don't. You know, there's a lot of diehard pro-Putin supporters in Russia.
There is a memorial there dedicated to the Russian and the U.S. pilots. And there are two flags, the U.S. flag and the Russian flag. And I know that here as well, there is such a memorial. There is a military burial place several kilometers away from here. The Soviet pilots are buried there who died during that dangerous mission. We're thankful to the citizens and the government of the U.S. for carefully taking care of their memory. I think that's very worthy and noble. We'll always remember other historical examples when our countries defeated common enemies together in the spirit of battle camaraderie and allyship that supported each other and facilitated each other. I'm sure that this heritage will help us rebuild and foster mutually beneficial and equal ties at this new stage, even during the hardest conditions. It is known that there have been no summits between Russia and the U.S. for 4 years, and that's a long time. This time was very hard for bilateral relations, and let's be frank, they've fallen to the lowest point since the Cold War. I think that's not benefiting our countries and the world as a whole. It is apparent that
So basically, Putin is evoking the kind of language that Russia very successfully disseminated during the 2016 election, first and foremost. I don't know how many of you guys were like tapped into politics back then. I don't know how many of you were tapped into internet politics back then, which is where this matters. But, you know, many of you guys might not think politics online matters that much in the grand scheme of things. Well, the Russian government certainly thought it did. Because the Russian government in 2015 and 2016 spent a lot of money and dedicated a lot of their own like government state-sponsored workers in the tech industry to disseminate bot-fueled, like bot farm narratives. Before bots were bots, they ran like physical human bot farms. They would have these bot farms spam the internet with narratives from Russia that benefited Trump. And one of the most popular narratives, and then of course these narratives seem so popular and you know, unassailable argument-wise, because they were always based on like the kind of logic that someone half-informed on any issue would use. People would buy it. People would start repeating it, even those that aren't the bots, even those that aren't even on the right. And one of my favorite examples of this that I know for a fact originated from like Russian propaganda like farms and whatnot was the idea that if Hillary Clinton won the election, liberals were falling for this, by the way, was the idea that if Hillary Clinton won the election, it would lead to war with Russia. Russia was desperate to convince Americans that because Hillary Clinton just can't get along with Russia, and she's a war hawk, that was a common term that was used for her back then, that if we elect Hillary Clinton, World War III will happen, that she will antagonize Russia, maybe even attack Russia first, and World War III will occur, that there'll be a draft, and all the young men will have to go off to war. It was a common sentiment among people, and might have been one of the largest wedges that pushed Hillary into the losing position in the 2016 election. So keep that in mind, guys. Like, it's, I don't know. I just think it's interesting that, like, this, I think the idea of we need peace between Russia and America, it's such an obvious statement that I feel like someone on stage saying that as if it's brave and a new thing to say should suss you out in the same way that whenever a politician goes on stage and says a bunch of like really basic stuff, they're either like really good or really bad, and they're just saying what they know people want to hear in order to get support. And Putin and Trump are both examples of the latter.
we had to amend the situation to move on from confrontation to dialogue. And in this case, a personal meeting between the heads of state has been long overdue. Naturally, under the condition of serious and painstaking work, and this work has been done in general. Me and President Trump have very good direct contact. We've spoken multiple times. We spoke frankly on the phone. And Special Envoy of the President, Mr. Witkoff, traveled out to Russia several times. Our advisors and heads of foreign ministries kept in touch all the time. And you know fully well that one of the central issues was the situation around Ukraine. We see the strive of the administration and President.
I think the proposal from Hillary that they used to justify that claim was a proposed no-fly zone over Syria. Isn't it crazy, too, because the Democrats were the only ones showing, like any concern for the fact that, like, at that time in Syria, there was a literal, like, genocide ramping up, perpetrated primarily by the Turks these days. Like, yeah. Dude, like, it's wild how much, like, and Assad, yes. Right now, if I'm not mistaken, Turkey is still genociding Kurds in Syria, right? That's still going on, if I'm not mistaken. I haven't kept up on it all that much, but I watch a lot of Civdiv videos. I don't know if you know who that is, but he's volunteered in a lot of wars. He's currently, I think, right now in Ukraine fighting Russians, but he also volunteered with the Kurds in Syria and fought with them against the Turks who are genociding them. Anyway, back to it.
President Trump personally to help facilitate the resolution of the Ukrainian conflict, and his strive to get to the crux of the matter, to understand that history is precious. As I've said, the situation in Ukraine has to do with fundamental threats to our security. Moreover, we've always considered the Ukrainian nation, and I've said it multiple times, a brotherly nation. However strange it may sound in these conditions, we have the same roots, and everything that's happening is a tragedy for us and terrible wound. Therefore, the country is sincerely interested in putting an end to it. At the same time, we're convinced that in order to make the...
This might be the longest I've ever seen Trump not speak in my life. It's actually 5 minutes and Trump's just been sitting there silently. That's crazy, dude. Like, we need to get like a stopwatch going and like stop it the second Trump says something, because I think we're going for a world record here.
Settlement, lasting and long term, we need to eliminate all the primary roots, the primary causes of that conflict, and we've said it multiple times, to consider all legitimate concerns of Russia and to reinstate a just balance of security in Europe and in the world on the whole.
Have you ever seen a case where two world leaders could fight each other and you know for a fact who would win 100 times out of 100? Has there ever been a more like obvious, like easy to predict lineup than Special Forces Putin versus McDonald's hamburger orange man Donald Trump, whose most physical activity he gets in a day is golfing? Could you, like, in no 100 out of 100 scenario does Trump win a single fight against Putin? I'm pretty sure Putin could, like, take Trump down and have him tapping out in, like, 1,000 different ways from the starting position that they're in right now. I just can't stop thinking about that. That, like, Putin, for all of, like, the machismo propaganda nonsense that he pushes, his special forces history is legit. You know, like, that's not part of the propaganda. So he could really just annihilate Trump. Putin is allegedly a 6th degree black belt in judo. Yeah. There's no scenario where Trump wins in a fight against Putin. Like, Putin would use Trump's weight against him, like, very effectively. That's what judo's all about. Anyway, let's get into it. Back into it.
And I agree with President Trump, as he has said today, that naturally the security of Ukraine should be ensured as well. Naturally, we are prepared to work on that. I would like to hope that the agreement that we've reached together will help us bring closer that goal and will pave the path towards peace in Ukraine. We expect that Kiev and European capitals will perceive that constructively and that they won't throw a wrench in the works.
This is all very, like, hard to believe when the entire conversation, like, this is a man who's, like, for the sake of an analogy, actively stabbing someone right now. On stage, he's actively stabbing someone. That someone is Ukraine. The guy on the other side of the stage is the one who's supposedly trying to negotiate him into no longer stabbing Ukraine. The guy on stage. And as he's stabbing the guy on stage, he's saying, we really want to stop stabbing this guy. We're hoping to bring peace and an end to this stabbing, but, we're hoping that nothing gets in the way. We're hoping that, the victim here doesn't do anything that could get in the way of bringing about peace. It's like, you are not only the one who initiated the stabbing, but you are actively continuing the stabbing and could just stop. Like, if you had any genuine concern or were not just going for a land grab here, then you would just stop and pull your troops out. I assure you, Zelensky would be way more appreciative of that than any peace talk. That's clearly not the goal. This is all meant to be like flowery nonsense speak. More likely than anything to stall for time, because Putin thinks if he just has long enough, he can beat Ukraine. Though I'm starting to think at this point, Russia might not be able to beat Ukraine. Not only are Ukrainians fighting like hell, but like the way they're fighting, it's really starting to seem like the average is like one Ukrainian soldier is worth several Russian soldiers. And like that just seems to be the breakdown of the situation. And they've got the home field advantage of defending. And you know, like on top of that, they've got NATO backing them. Like the European Union and NATO are not going to allow Russia to topple Ukraine and turn it into a satellite state, just right up all on top of the European Union, all up on Poland and whatnot. Like that shit's not gonna fly. So before, like way before Kyiv is threatened by like Russian takeover, Europe is going to mobilize like a full assault on the Ukrainian, like Russian front and help Ukraine at least take back what was taken. Who knows? It's a resource war. You're not wrong, the Starfather. They want, like, Putin wants the land, and he wants to use the taking of the land to justify what he's doing with a ethnic argument. He's trying to argue that Ukrainians are ethnically Russian, or at least that Eastern Ukrainians are ethnically Russian, or that they speak Russian because at one point they were occupied by Russia. So that makes them Russians. So he might argue at the very least they should keep like the eastern parts of Ukraine. But regardless, I think he wants all of it. And he's trying to use that agenda to get people on board with the invasion, which for the most part he has. In reality, what we know Putin wants are mineral rights. That's the thing that Trump has even offered Putin, and Putin wants more, is mineral rights. He wants all of Ukraine's mineral rights. That is truly what Putin's after. It is in fact a resource war, the Starfather. So yeah, that aside though, let's listen to more of this authoritarian babbling.
They will not make any attempts to use some backroom dealings to conduct provocations to torpedo the nascent progress. Incidentally, when the new administration came to power, bilateral trade started to grow.
I'm telling you guys, Putin's just stalling for time until the Shagohod is finished.
It's still very symbolic. Still, we have a growth of 20%. As I've said, we have a lot of dimensions for joint work. It is clear that the U.S. and Russian investment and business cooperation has tremendous potential. Russia and the U.S. can offer each other so much in trade, digital, high-tech, and in space exploration. We see that Arctic cooperation is also very possible, and our international context, for example, between the Far East of Russia and the West Coast of the U.S. Overall, it's very important for our countries to turn the page, to go back to cooperation. It is symbolic that not far away from here. The
odds of this being a Putin body double, I'd wager $60. So a lot of people in chat are saying this could be a Putin body double. I'm not going to lie. If there's any country that pulls that shit, like sending unironic body doubles in like maybe silicone face masks to make them look indistinguishable, if I thought there was any country that would do that, it would be Russia with Putin. Like there is a non-zero chance that that is a guy in a rubber mask or a silicone mask pretending to be Putin. He is a paranoid, insane enough guy to do something like that. As if, like, Trump would turn on him. Then again, you gotta remember, like, Trump and Putin are constantly, like, sucking each other off and fucking each other in the ass. So I don't really feel like Putin would be scared of, like, this particular press engagement with Trump.
The border between Russia and the U.S., there was a so-called international date line. I think you can step over, literally, from yesterday into tomorrow. And I hope we'll succeed in that, in political sphere. I would like to thank President Trump for our joint work, for the well-wishing and trustworthy tone of our conversation. It's important that both sides are result-oriented, and we see that the President of the U.S. has a very clear idea of what he would like to achieve. He sincerely cares about prosperity of his nation. Still, he understands that Russia has its own national interests. I expect that today's agreements...
Yeah, the national interest of taking all of Ukraine's land and minerals
will be the starting point, not only for the solution of the Ukraine...
and subjugating its people to not only cultural genocide, but maybe literal genocide. Wouldn't be the first time Russia's done it to the Ukrainians. Look up the Holodomor. They starved the Ukrainians out. And that's not the only time either.
...an issue, but also will help us bring back business-like and pragmatic relations between Russia and the U.S. And in the end, I would like to add one more thing. I'd like to remind you that in 2022, during the last contact with the previous administration, I tried to convince my previous American colleague that the situation should not be brought to the point of no return when it would come to hostilities. And I said it quite directly back then that it's a big mistake. Today, when President Trump...
Where are the Mongols when you need them? Yeah, just imagine, like, battlefield of Ukraine, all of a sudden, there are, like, fucking horns in the distance, and all of a sudden just a massive line of cavalry forms up, like the Battle of the Pelennor Fields in Return of the King, and you realize, oh my god, it's zombie Genghis Khan. He's come back from the dead, and he's like... Alright, man. What an awesome story that would be, huh?
Saying that
someone write that.
If he was the president back then, there will be no war. And I'm quite sure that it would indeed be so. I can confirm that. I think that overall, me and President Trump have built a very good, businesslike, and trustworthy contact. And I have every reason to believe that moving down this path, we can come and...
It really does not help, or actually it really does help my case that Trump is in Putin's pocket, or vice versa, or both. Whenever Putin's always, like, emphasizing how much he likes Trump, it's like, keep in mind, Putin does not like America, okay? Putin doesn't like America, but he likes Trump running America. That should concern you. When your enemy is happy about the choices you're making, that implies you're maybe making the wrong choices.
The sooner the better, to the end of the conflict in Ukraine. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. President. That was very profound, and I will say that I believe we had a very productive...
I would bet everything, literally everything, that Trump did not pay attention to a word Putin said there and just had, like, a preloaded response. Like, he did there what he probably does when Melania is talking to him, where he's like, I totally agree with you. I totally agree. And he's just got like 100 affirmative responses like queued up and ready to make it seem like he's listening. That's what I feel like Trump just did. I don't think he got a word of that.
Meeting, there were many, many points that we agreed on. Most of them, I would say, a couple of big ones that we haven't quite gotten there, but we've made some headway. So there's no deal until there's a deal. I will call up NATO in a little while. I will call up the various people that I think are appropriate, and I'll, of course, call up President Zelensky and tell him about today's meeting. It's ultimately up to them. They're going to have to agree with what Marco and Steve and some of the great people from the Trump administration who've come here, Scott and John Radcliffe. Thank you very much. But we have some of our really great leaders. They've been doing a phenomenal job. We also have some tremendous Russian...
When will Trump say anything of any, like, actual substance? Every time you hear Trump talk, it's like the verbal equivalent of a chicken drumstick, like a fried chicken drumstick that you bite into, and it's all bread and bone. There's no meat inside whatsoever. That's every word of what Trump says. Yes, it's a nothing word salad.
Business representatives here, and I think, you know, everybody wants to deal with us. We've become the hottest country anywhere in the world in a very short period of time, and we look forward to that. We look forward to dealing. We're going to try and get this over with. We really made some great progress today. I've always had a fantastic relationship with President Putin, with Vladimir.
We know. Trust me, we know. The Democrats claiming that you have a little too good of a relationship with Putin is why you're unironically trying to claim that the Obama and his administration should be arrested.
Vladimir, we had many tough meetings, good meetings. We were interfered with by the Russia hoax. That made it a little bit tougher to deal with.
Oh, there he goes. He mentioned it right there. For those that don't know, he never refers to it by what it actually is. He refers to it as the Russia hoax, or the Russia hoax, or Russiagate hoax. The kind of thing that, like, if you wanted to actually learn about it and maybe, like, dig deep into it, you can't do that off of what he calls it, right? Like, he doesn't give you enough information to look into it when he refers to it critically. And so what I've noticed that he does is he refers to it that way. But if you actually look into the supposed Russia hoax, it was actually several members of his administration going to prison, including his former lawyer, because he had a menagerie of fall guys set up to take the blame once it came out that his administration was colluding with Russia. So yes, they weren't able to find definitive evidence that Donald Trump himself was knowingly ordering his administration to collude with Russia to help him get into office, the Russian government, I should say, to help him get into office. But what his literal campaign and administration were found guilty of and went to prison over, including his former lawyer, was like them knowingly colluding with Russia, supposedly on his behalf without his knowledge. Knowing Trump as a powerful rich guy, do you think they were just working with Russia behind the scenes to get him in power, all on their lonesome, never got an order to do that, they just did it of their own volition? Or do you think he damn well knew what was going on, and he said, "Listen up, I pay you well. If this ever comes out, there's never any evidence I knew anything about it. If you cop up to it, then I'll make it well worth your while, because I'll be president." You know, like, I don't know. Those guys going to prison seems pretty likely that, you know, Trump knew something. They all worked for him. It was part of his administration. And yet he refers to it as a hoax, and people believe it because Trump's not in prison right now. And most people didn't even know the names of Trump's guys that ended up in prison. But it's literal real-life kingpin. Like, somehow people still believe this guy's not a criminal, despite it being, like, cartoonishly obvious. That's why I totally buy, like, Kingpin as a character in Spider-Man, where it's like, yeah, for 10 years I've been the most notorious organized crime ring boss in town, and the cops still haven't gotten me. You know, it's like, yeah, no, come to think of it, not looking at real life, that kind of shit happens more often than we'd like.
But he understood it. I think he's probably seen things like that during the course of his career. He's seen it all. But we had to put up with the Russia hoax. He knew it was a hoax, and I knew it was a hoax. But what was done was...
By the way, the DOJ outed that Putin and his administration invested hundreds of millions of dollars a year into paying right-wing YouTubers and, like, streamers and TikTokers to promote Trump. Russia hoax, though, of course.
It was very criminal, but it made it harder for us to deal as a country in terms of the business and all of the things that we'd like to have dealt with. But we'll have a good chance when this is over. So just to put it very quickly, I'm going to start making a few phone calls and tell them what happened. But we had an extremely productive meeting, and many points were agreed to. There are just a very few that are left. Some are not that significant. One is probably the most significant. But we have a very good chance of getting there. We didn't get there, but we have a very good chance of getting there. I would like to thank President Putin and his entire team, whose faces...
I guarantee you, 10 months from now, war is still going. That, or several times between now and then, Trump attempts to literally hand Ukraine to Putin. I'm going to assume that if Trump tries to go with a deal that's just absolutely not fair to the Ukrainians, Zelensky won't agree. At a certain point, I think he's going to have to go, all right, America's not helping us. We're going to keep fighting, no matter what America says or does, and Europe's going to back us if America won't do it.
Who I know in many cases, other than that, whose faces I get to see all the time in the newspapers. You're almost as famous as the boss, but especially this one.
The boss. Dun, 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 dun. What a thrill!
Over here. But we had some good meetings over the years, right? Good, productive meetings over the years, and we hope to have that in the future. But let's do the most productive one right now. We're going to stop really 5, 6, 7,000, thousands of people a week from being killed, and President Putin wants to see that as much as I do. So, again, Mr. President, I'd like to thank you very much, and we'll speak to you very soon and probably see you again very soon. Thank you very much, Vladimir.
Next time in Moscow.
Why was Volodymyr not here, though? That's what I want to know. You wrinkly little ball sack of a man with a tiny cock. Never forget, Donald Trump has a cock so tiny, it takes you a minute to spot it. Like, if Trump walked out on stage naked, the first thing you'd realize is, oh my God, Trump is naked. Look at his, like, gut. Look at his man titties. Look at his, like, insane tan lines. And you'd be looking for him and be like, oh, his cock is out. Oh, shit, there it is. Like, that, we all know this to be true. Anyway, folks. If you enjoyed this video, if you found it fun, entertaining, or educational in any way whatsoever, then please consider leaving a like on the stream if you're watching it right now in the present, and leave a like on it and a comment as well if you're watching it in the future when this goes up as its own YouTube video. And of course, if you're feeling extra generous, and you want to see more from me, consider subscribing and ringing the bell icon, and maybe supporting me financially as well. By donating, subscribing, or gifting a sub to someone else on my website, xanderhall.com/live, or support me through YouTube, Twitch, Streamlabs, Stream Elements, Patreon, or buy some custom Xander Hall merch to the Streamlabs link down below. Y'all and your financial direct support helps me to keep the lights on and a roof above my head here at the Xander Hall Studios, so I highly appreciate it. And of course, if you want to see more from me on other platforms, particularly if you want to be a part of any community events I do in the future, I highly recommend you join my fan Discord. That is the main hub of my community and fan base. I host weekly watch parties, movie nights, or like gaming events there. And on top of that, I announce all my new uploads and streams as well. So join my Discord through the link down below if you don't want to miss a thing. And regardless of how you support me, though big shout out to the likers, the commenters, and of course the donators, thank you to everybody who watched my content. Be a liker, not a lurker, but even to the lurkers, I appreciate you. And I hope you have a good one.